These kids said everything about gender and this and that and the other, but they didn't say anything about art. And this is my biggest gripe with this whole controversy with the closer, that you cannot report on an artist's work and remove artistic nuance from his words. It would be like if you were reading a newspaper and they say, man, shot in the face by a 6-foot rabbit, expected to survive. You'd be like, oh my God. And they never tell you it's a Bugs Bunny cartoon. I took a lot of cold shots in show business. And I gotta tell you, as the years go on, you feel the shots less and less. Hey, it's just the business, is what you say. But that one, that day, boy, that day they hurt me. When I heard those talking points coming out of these children's faces, that really, sincerely hurt me. Because I know those kids didn't come up with those words. I've heard those words before. The more you say I can't say something, the more urgent it is for me to say it. And it has nothing to do with what you're saying I can't say. It has everything to do with my right, my freedom of artistic expression that is valuable to me, that is not separate from me. It's worth protecting. And Peggy Cooper Cafritz, as sick as she was, got out of her bed so she could be with her babies. She never left us. So I did it. Say, you know, whatever you want to do, however I can help, I'll do it. I gotta tell you, if you quit a show like Chappelle's show, I don't know if you know what happens to you professionally, but I'll tell you what doesn't happen. They don't just say, well, good luck in your future endeavors. With that media, they beat me up. With their power, they tried to make me behave. It takes a strong person to stand out in the cold like that. And I swear to God, so much of the strength I got to do that, the inner warmth I got to do that, I learned in this school and from my friends who helped raise me. So why wouldn't I do anything I could to help my benefactor? And the last time I came back, after the closer, when the kids were mad at me, I gotta tell you, that was quite the day. All the kids were screaming and yelling. I remember I said to the kids, I go, well, okay, well, what do you guys think I did wrong? And a line formed. Protecting for me, and it's worth protecting for everyone else who endeavors in our noble, noble professions. And these kids didn't understand that they were instruments of oppression. And I didn't get mad at them. They're kids, they're freshmen, they're not ready yet. They don't know. What made me mad, and I am this petty. I ain't saying names. One of the kids' mother went on Fox News. And she used to be a student here. I remember her face, but I don't know if she was particularly popular. Anyway. She was in the literary media arts department. She said a lot of things that I didn't like, a lot of things, but, you know, that's her right. Things she said that got to me. She said, at Duke Ellington, that theater was a sanctuary for students. I used to sit there and meditate. Well, of course you'd meditate. You were a literary media arts student. We didn't meditate in here, we got to work. But okay, fine. I would sit in there and meditate, she said. And then she scrunched her face up. She's a beautiful woman, but her face looked hideous the way she scrunched it up. And she said, and just to imagine his name on that theater. How could you do that to those kids? Listen. No matter what they said about The Closer, it was still the most watched special in the world. And I am still of the mind, and I say this with all humility, it is a masterpiece. And I challenge all my peers to make its equal. They cannot. I am sure. It will be decades before you ever see someone in my genre as proficient as me. I am maybe a once-in-a-lifetime talent. And I wasn't willing to accept that. So I quit. And when I quit, it was a very difficult time in my life that I'll spare you the details, but man, fuck show business. It was tough. And then one day I was in Panama City, Panama, and I was at a hotel, and I looked at the lobby. There was a painting of Abraham Lincoln. And then I would look closer. It wasn't a painting. It was all pennies, just pennies, on a black canvas arranged into the face of Abraham Lincoln. And I asked the guy, I said, how much is that painting worth? He said, $600,000, sir. And I looked at the pennies that made up the painting, and I was like, that's like $300 worth of pennies. A light bulb went in my head. I realized the value of art. Some of the biggest wars and crimes and scandals in history were financed through the theft of art. Art is a powerful commodity. And artists, if you're good at it, should never behave as a commodity. That's a tough one. And then I gave up. I said, this is probably it. I accepted the fact that the career I thought I was gonna have was over, but I started to rediscover just my art for its own sake. I would go to comedy clubs, and I worked for way less money than I ever had, and I enjoyed it more than any of the work I ever did. It was probably the best work I'll ever do, because it was so honest. It was so sincere. There was no media, there was no studio, there was no scrutiny, just me and the crowds. And I did it night after night, and slowly but surely the crowds got bigger and bigger. And then suddenly people started to notice, and Polestar would say, Dave Chappelle has the tour of the year. And again, and then the year after that, and then the year after that. I said, you mean I would get out of Eastern? After I did Lorne Michaels, after I did Saturday Night Live, Lorne Michaels said something that I got to share with you. He goes, you went to Peggy Caford School, didn't you? That's what he said. And I said, I did. And he said, I want to say that Saturday Night Live, he goes, tell her I owe her money. You know, I never asked to have this theater named after me. Peggy asked me. She was ailing, and I went to her house to visit her. She said, I want you to put your name on the school. She said, it will help us raise money for the school. And to me, it was like, I felt like I'm a little young for that, and I'm still kind of using the name, you know what I mean? Let's see what I do with it first. You never know, Like, imagine if OJ named his son OJ Jr. Oh, Dad. And around then, I was receiving the Mark Twain Prize, huge honor. And And the next day, all the artists that came to honor me, the Bradley Coopers and Chris Tuckers and all these great people, came to Ellington and they taught master classes for the students.
Here is a 30-minute commentary from a woman watching the video titled Dave Chappelle on What's Going On, Fellas. You know, I stumbled across this clip earlier today, and I've been sitting with it. I've watched it 3 times now. And I think what's happening here with this title, Dave Chappelle on What's Going On, Fellas, is that people are looking for answers. They're looking for a diagnosis. They're looking for the great oracle of our time, the court jester who actually speaks the truth, to come out and explain the quiet, gnawing feeling that a lot of men, and honestly, a lot of us in general, are feeling right now. And I say this as a lady watching from the outside, but also from the inside of this culture. When I see Dave walk out on that stage, and in this clip, he's got that signature swagger, the cigarette smoke kind of wafting up, the stool, the glass of something brown on the table. You know you're not getting a stand-up routine. You're getting a sermon. He sits down, and he does this thing where he looks out at the audience, and he doesn't even say anything for a solid 15 seconds. He just looks. And in that silence, you can feel the room holding its breath. He starts talking, and he immediately sets the tone. He doesn't say, "Hey, what's up?" He starts talking about the weight. And I think that's the first thing that struck me. He starts talking about how heavy everything feels. And he looks specifically at the men in the audience, the fellas. He says something to the effect of, "I see you. I see you in here. I see you trying to hold it together." And I'm sitting here on my couch, listening to this, and I'm thinking about the men in my life. My father, my uncles, my friends' husbands. And I'm thinking about how much of their existence is defined by the absence of a question. Nobody asks a man, "Are you okay?" They ask, "How's work?" Or, "Did you see the game?" But they don't ask, "How is your soul doing?" And Dave, in his way, he goes there. He starts weaving this story. And you know Dave, he's a storyteller. He doesn't just tell jokes. He takes you on a journey about a friend of his. He doesn't name names, but he talks about this friend who had everything. The car, the house, the beautiful family, the job that was supposed to mean success. And then, one day, this friend just stopped. He didn't have a breakdown in the dramatic sense, no screaming or crying. He just stopped engaging. Dave describes it as the man just going quiet. And I'm listening to Dave describe this, and he's doing his physical comedy even while sitting down. He's mimicking this friend, just staring at the TV, not seeing it. And Dave looks at the audience, and he says, "That's what happens. You build the whole thing. You build the empire. And then you wake up one day and realize you're a slave to the empire." That line hit me. Because as a woman, we're taught to want the empire. We're taught to want the stability, the provider, the man with the plan. But Dave is pointing out the flaw in the architecture. He's saying, what's going on, fellas, is that you've been sold a bill of goods. You were told that if you get the money, the status, the respect, that the peace would follow. But the peace never comes. The peace is always one more promotion away, one more car away. And the audience is laughing because Dave is funny. He does this bit about the difference between how men and women process stress. And he's careful here. He's walking a tightrope. He's not putting women down, but he's pointing out a fundamental difference in how we're built. He says a woman, when she's stressed, she'll call her friend, she'll talk it out, she'll process it in a circle of community. And he says a man, when he's stressed, he goes into a cave. He goes into his head. And if he stays in that cave too long, the cave becomes his whole world. I'm watching this, and I'm thinking about the isolation. I'm thinking about how many men I know who don't have a friend in the way women have friends. They have guys they watch the game with, they have co-workers, but who do they call at 2 a.m. in the morning when the existential dread hits? Usually, nobody. Or they put it on their partner, their wife, their girlfriend, and then they get frustrated when she can't fix it. And Dave points that out. He says, "You can't fix it. That's the problem. You're the fixer. When the fixer is broken, who fixes the fixer?" He goes deeper. He starts talking about the younger generation. He does this bit about the internet and the manosphere and all the noise out there telling young men what they're supposed to be. And he doesn't mock them, which I appreciate. He looks at them with a kind of pity. He says there's a whole generation of young fellas out there who are being told that the reason they feel empty is because they don't have enough money, or because women don't respect them, or because the system is rigged. And he says, all of that might be true, but that's not the reason you're empty. You're empty because you don't know who you are when nobody's watching. And I paused the video there, because that's the core of it, isn't it? For so long, masculinity has been defined by performance. Performing strength, performing stoicism, performing success. But when the audience leaves, when it's just you and your thoughts in the dark, what's left? Dave suggests that for a lot of fellas, what's left is just nothing. Or worse, anger. Because anger is easier to feel than sadness. Anger is active. Sadness feels like drowning. He talks about his own life briefly. He doesn't get too personal, but he alludes to the fact that he stepped away from the spotlight at the height of his career. He walked away from a $50 million contract. And he looks at the fellas and he says, "Y'all thought I was crazy, but I was dying. I was on that stage, getting that money, making y'all laugh, and I was dying, because I was performing for y'all, but I wasn't living for me." That's the wisdom that gives him the authority to speak on this. He's not some guy in a podcast studio who's never left his hometown, telling you how to be an alpha. He's a man who had the mountaintop, looked around, and realized he was alone up there. So he came back down. He came back down to earth, to his family, to his farm in Ohio, to the quiet. And he tells the fellas in the audience, you need a place to be quiet. He says the hustle, the grind, the constant motion, it's a drug. It's a way to avoid yourself. And he says, if you can't sit in a room by yourself for an hour, without a phone, without a screen, without a drink, without a joint, just you and your thoughts, then you are running from something. And whatever you're running from, it's faster than you. It's going to catch you. Now, the audience is laughing, but it's that deep, recognizing laugh. The laugh of people who are seeing themselves in the mirror and don't quite know if they like what they see. And Dave, he's a master of that. He makes you laugh to let your guard down, and then he slides the knife in. He starts talking about relationships, and this is where I, as a woman, was leaning in. He talks about how men approach relationships these days. He talks about the transactional nature of modern dating, the apps, the swiping, the commodification of affection. And he says, fellas, you're treating women like video games. You're trying to unlock achievements. You're trying to get the high score. And then you're mad when the game doesn't love you back. He's not excusing men for their behavior, but he's explaining the emptiness that drives it. He says a lot of men are looking for a woman to save them. To be their therapist, their mother, their cheerleader, and their lover all in one. And he says that's not fair. That's a job for 4 people. And when she can't do all that, you resent her. But the problem isn't her. The problem is you're looking for a solution to a problem she didn't create. He takes a sip of his drink here. The glass looks heavy in his hand, and he slows down. He gets quieter. And this is the part of the commentary that I keep replaying in my head. He says, what's going on, fellas? What's going on is that you're lonely. And you've been taught that loneliness is weakness. But it's not. Loneliness is information. It's your soul telling you that you're disconnected. And the only way to fix that isn't to get more followers, or a bigger watch, or a newer car. The only way to fix that is to connect. Truly connect. With yourself first, and then with someone else. And that's scary. Because connection means vulnerability. And vulnerability means you might get hurt. He then does this bit about his own father. He talks about how his father was a man of few words. A working man. A man who came home, took off his boots, and sat in his chair. And Dave says he used to think his father was simple. But now as a grown man, he realizes his father wasn't simple. His father was at peace. His father knew who he was. He was a provider. He was a father. He was a husband. He didn't need the validation of the world, because he had the validation of the 4 walls of his home. And Dave looks at the camera, or at the audience, but it feels like he's looking through the screen at me. And he says, y'all are looking for validation from people who don't even know your name. And you're wondering why you feel like a ghost in your own life. That's the long and short of it, isn't it? The ghost in your own life. Going through the motions, hitting the goals, doing the things, but feeling like you're watching yourself from the outside. As the commentary goes on, he starts to wrap it up. He doesn't give a neat, tidy solution, because life doesn't work that way. He's not selling a course or a 10-step plan. He's just holding up a mirror. He says the only way out is through. You've got to feel it. You've got to sit in the discomfort. You've got to admit that you're scared. You've got to admit that you don't have it all figured out. And you've got to find the people, the real people, who will sit with you in that uncertainty. He stands up at the end. He puts his jacket on. And he says, "Be easy with yourselves, fellas. You all are carrying a lot, but you don't have to carry it alone. That's what's going on. You're carrying a weight that was never yours to carry alone, and you forgot you were allowed to put it down." And then he walks off. No big punchline. No mic drop. Just a man walking off a stage. And I'm sitting here having watched this for the third time, and I'm thinking about all the men I know. My dad, who works 60 hours a week, and sits in his truck in the driveway for 20 minutes before he comes inside, just to decompress. My brother, who is 28, who has a good job, but tells me he feels like he's falling behind, even though I can't tell in what race. My friend's husband, who recently started therapy, and was so ashamed of it, he lied about where he was going for 3 months. And I'm thinking about the silence that surrounds them, the expectation that they just handle it, the quiet judgment when they show emotion. Dave Chappelle in this clip does something that is rare. He offers acknowledgement. He says, "I see you. I see the weight, and it's okay that it's heavy." And sometimes, in a world that is constantly telling men to be more successful, more stoic, more dominant, more chill, sometimes just being seen, just having someone say, "That weight is real," is the most radical thing you can do. I don't know what the answer is for the fellas. I'm just a lady on a couch watching a video. But I know that the answer isn't in the bottom of a bottle, or in a new purchase, or in a fleeting moment of validation. And I know that the men I love the most are the ones who have learned to let the mask slip, just a little. The ones who can say, "I had a rough day, and I don't want to talk about it, but can I just sit here with you?" That's connection. That's the thing Dave is pointing to. That's the cure for the ghost life. So if you're watching this fella, or lady, or whoever you are, and you felt something in your chest while watching Dave talk, maybe that's the thing to listen to. Maybe that's the thing that needs tending to. Anyway, that's my commentary. I think I'm going to go call my brother now.